December 4th, 2018. This is the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board being called to order. Anybody in the audience would like to speak tonight, please be recognized by the chair and come up closer to a microphone. So we are being recorded and streamed live. Approval of tonight's agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Did we review the minutes?
Yeah, I didn't get the minutes done. They're only like 20 minutes.
Okay.
So.
We'll move right forward to the Marine Department report. Sheila.
Okay, so the floating dock project is going to start tomorrow. I walk the docks with AGM. We have a plan. I know which ones we're gonna haul. The rest we're gonna wet store over inside the bull basin, so they'll be protected. They will not be connected together, so there should be no damage. We're going to haul 4 of them and 2 fingers to do repairs on them in the spring before they're put back in. AGM won the contract. They're already here working on the bull basin. So they're gonna work on the bull basin at low tide, work at us on high tide because we have low tide work over there. I don't think it's gonna take them very long to get the job done. The 4 that we're gonna haul, the 4 40-footers that we're gonna pull are going to be pulled by the travel lift over at Great Harbor Yacht Club, and we're gonna drive to it there, and then do our work on them there, and then they're gonna come back in. So that project will be complete. They'll put them back in the spring. We gotta figure out what we're gonna do for power and water. I'm sure it's just gonna be like run along the outside of the floats, because we're hoping for next year at this time to be getting a new building and getting a new floating dock system. GZA, the engineers and consultants are coming. They are the ones that designed it, and then we'll put the brakes on it and ask them to modify it to make sure that the design for the new floats would be able to withstand the weather conditions that we have here. So they're doing some wave modeling and all different types of stuff like that, looking at possibly putting in a wave attenuator or whatever. They're going to be here December 17th, is a tentative date for them to do a walkthrough, do some diving, and do some information gathering. Then tomorrow, so tomorrow at 10 a.m. I'm walking with AGM just to make sure that we're all on the same page about what's coming, what's going, and how we want them stacked and stored for the winter time so that they're safe from any further damage. At 1800 at 6 o'clock tomorrow night, we are expecting the push boats, the dredge, and the work skiffs to arrive on island. There's 2 scows already tied up to the big mooring that we have out in the harbor. We have made all the arrangements that we need to make with the steamship authority for the offload. Where the sand's going to be stored is on Industry Road, right across the street from Community Center, which is our property. So that's where we store the sand, and it's going to be trucked from the steamship authority to that location. And we got the steamship to extend their hours so that these guys can load and offload up until 9:45 at night. They have to be off the dock by 9:45 to be out of the way for the last boat coming in. And Robert B. Auer is the one that won that contract. We've been working with him. So we've been staying pretty busy with that type of stuff. And we plan on staying busy straight through until the dredging is over. They're not taking a long Christmas break, so neither will we. I think they are gonna leave half day on Christmas Eve, take Christmas Day, and then be back the day after. To get phone so that they can meet the deadline, we have to be done by January 15th.
Is there an estimate, Sheila, on the amount of spoils to be removed? The
There
dredging
is, but I
project?
don't know it off the top of my head.
Length of time period on the project?
Well, they have to be done by January 15th, because of like the winter flounder, and that's like the window that we have via the state. But they were confident. A lot of other companies didn't bid on it because of the short window, but, they're confident that they can get it done.
It was suggested I take a look at the pretty colors in the boat basin. Are you familiar with what's the project that's taking place in the boat basin?
Yeah, they are doing some core sampling and stuff, but we haven't had any problems over there.
Disturbance below, I'm told, a lot of pylons are being replaced under the cottages, and some diving activity and,
Diving activity to do some core sampling, but nothing's been replaced yet.
no, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've been over there with her a bunch of times walking it and checking it out, and we haven't seen any issues whatsoever.
Are they permitted for a major project?
Yeah. Yeah, that's not through us. You know, that's all chapter 91 and stuff like that.
Yes,
Yeah.
just curious if you're familiar with it.
Yeah, no, they get all the permits and stuff. They know that they're under the spotlight, so they pay pretty close attention. So I'm sure they're doing everything right.
Questions for Sheila from the board?
I have a question that's not related to the projects, but this summer they had oil absorbing socks put on the drains going from the A&P parking lot, Stop and Shop into the boat basin, right where the boat rentals are down there. Were those put in by the town, or did you know anything about who had put those in?
The socks, the village socks,
Yes.
we had put some boom out there a couple times because those pipes, once in a while, will spit like what's inside of it, and
Right.
people get into a complete panic, thinking that it's a oil spill and all this other stuff, and it's not. So I put the booms there just so everybody realizes that we are aware of it, we are checking it out, it isn't a reportable anything, and actually all it is the inside of the pipe. You know, the stuff that's built up on the inside of the pipe. It usually happens after we have a big rain, and stuff goes down the storm drains and spits out there.
Okay.
But we're doing that just to keep everybody calm, because everybody kind of over exaggerates.
Well, it looked like cleaner water coming out of the pipes than it was that was in the boat basin when I was looking at it. So, yeah, it was good to
That's a good
do
sign then,
a precautionary thing.
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you, Sheila.
you're welcome.
Any questions from the public on the Marine Department report? Moving forward to old business, hazardous materials collection and containment, continued discussion. We did recommend to the select board that hazardous waste be, possibly a system be created where it's more accessible to the public. And I did get in touch with Rob McNeil for an update on what may be happening there, and he said they are asking the select board to waive fees for all, fees only given to commercial, so my opinion on that may not be supportive, but and also Mr. McNeil mentioned to me that the DPW is not supportive of any plan to open a year-round drop-off or storage of hazardous materials, but he's happy to talk more about us with this. So, about this, so, I have some suggestions in mind, and I haven't put them in writing yet, wanting to reveal that to the rest of you. And Ginger, you wanted to continue with this, and with good reason. So now that with this response, I think it's been a long time coming that hazardous waste needs to be more accessible to the public, not just once every other month and only a Saturday, because we all know that there are contractors and homeowners who are probably never here for a Saturday during the entire year. So we need a PK in there, we need a storage facility, and we need ease of disposal of this material in a proper way. Ginger, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I just, I wanted to thank you for picking up the ball on that. Did the DPW, did Mr. McNeil say why they don't support the idea?
No, he did not.
Because I think,
He'd be willing to talk with us.
yeah, we need to know some of the hurdles in order to figure out how to solve the problem.
Certainly, and I didn't ask him to be in here tonight, but he said he would meet with us at a future meeting. Certainly, having his reason for why he's not in support of this would be helpful to us all. Anybody else on this subject?
Well, I agree with what you just said, that we gotta get some feedback, and, well, I think all the suggestions that you have are pretty brilliant, but it's a shame that there's not more access to get rid of the hazardous waste.
Well, thanks. We'll continue this to the next meeting, and maybe I can, if we can't get Mr. McNeil here for the next meeting, I'll get a more elaborate statement from him if I can. He's very accessible, I'll give him that. And what he's, I know he's got his hands full on a lot going on, so, but I'm glad we're all in agreement. This is an issue we'll continue with. Eco-friendly mooring discussion. Fritz isn't here, but Sheila, where you're here, you had, you've been an advocate for and having your reasons on the helix mooring, and I'm, inclined to support Fritz on continuing his venture in the eco-friendly mooring. But you mentioned 3 reasons on the helix: fishermen fetching up on them. A large percentage of them have been abandoned, and the third one was the ones that are in use are using chain. My question on that was were the bungee cords not working, so they've just gone back to using chain like they would with a typical mooring?
Yep, exactly, and also those bungee cords are just so expensive that, when they initially went in there, I think we have 12 left with that have the bungee cords still, but, then 3 of them are not being used. They're getting buried, they're not being capped, and my fear is the fishermen are gonna get hung down on them when they're stalled. And also the demographics of boating has changed since those initially went in 20 years ago, like over at Children's Beach, in a couple different places. And now people have bigger boats, everyone has bigger boats. Like Children's Beach, back when this all started, was designed for like 13 and 14 foot boats. Now we have up to 25-foot boats over there, and so the person with the helix gets a new boat. Everybody around them that doesn't have a helix has to move, and he stays in the same spot. That's not fair, and the boaters are not all about that. But the biggest reason is they can't find them. There's no way to truly inspect them other than at the very and they're 90%
Excuse
of the
me,
time
sir.
getting buried. They're pulling out super easy. Like, if I can pull them out with our little buoy boat, I pull them out like they're a toy. You know, with a dormouse anchor or a mushroom or something like that, I have to fight with it if it's worth its weight. So, where they're using chain anyways, to me, you know, none of our mooring handlers have the thing to do the helixes anyways. They've all gone to standard type moorings. As I said, I've worked with a couple people, and this is something like, I keep missing, like, it seems like every meeting I can't come to, Fritz is here, and then every meeting I come to, he's not here. So, what really needs to happen is he needs to come down and see me, and I can just explain all this to him. But, you know, we definitely work with some different companies that are willing to put them on dormouse anchors, which is a pyramid style, and they're willing to try them on the mushroom anchors, which is going to be way more, we're gonna be able to sell it to the public a lot easier. Plus, our biggest problem right now is trying to figure out how to recover them. Because with chain, when you're pulling up the mooring, you can take a bite into the chain with a hook and pull it on board. With these elastic bands, you're gonna pull it and it's just gonna stretch and stretch and stretch and stretch. So that's what I'm working with these people that make these type of moorings go. I get it, I get the chain scour, I get all that, I see where you're coming from, but when everybody's like, oh, we need to go to helix and we're using chain, we're getting the same chain scour as you are off of a mushroom and dormouse anyways, if not more, because it's so close to the bar, it's just laying there and doing it. So it was a good idea, but there's a better way and there's a safer way. The harbors that use them don't have fishermen dragging dredges through them. You know, they're set up for like sailboat harbors, like Mattapoisett, where nobody's fishing in there, and so nobody can get hung down on it. But bigger boats, we lost the guy on that clam, and that's exactly what happened. They were right off the east of Nantucket, they were dragging, and the drag got caught down, got hung down in something, and it rolled the boat. And that's my fail with the skull.
Well, certainly we have a lot of mooring field area where the scallopers never enter, but I didn't want to beat this up tonight, but I'm glad you were here to explain what you have explained.
Yeah, and if you guys could just pass on to
I've made a note of it.
Be happy to come down, and I'd be happy to show him what I'm talking about, and show him some of the different ideas. All about the eco-friendly mooring, all about saving the eelgrass. 100% on board with you guys with that. We just gotta find a safe way to do it.
Okay. I apologize for this, like, dragging out, but
No, it's no worries.
at some point,
We gotta put an end to it.
yes. Thank you, Sheila.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have a comment on that if they wish? Well, the floor is open on that. Okay, good. New business, status of the commercial scallop season, possibly an early closure discussion. I'm hoping this isn't alarmist. The mention of closure was made by several scallopers, so I'm told, to the Shellfish warden. So he's has gone about in the recent past and polled some of the fishermen how they feel. There was a lengthy article in the newspaper at the beginning of the season that painted a gloomy picture of the season, and so I think it's only natural that it be brought up in public discussion here. Want to let you all know tonight that there will be no decisions made. We do not have representation from Natural Resources. Jeff is off island tonight, and but he did guarantee to me that if any changes were to be made in regulations, any restrictions, that it would come before us here first at the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board during a public meeting. So there will be no changes made tonight, but we certainly want to hear from all of you on what you're finding out there, what you're seeing, and what the conditions are like. First, I'll start with the board. If there's any comments here, we can go straight to public comment.
Did you see the warden polled the fishermen? Did he have results of the poll?
Really did not, no. I don't have any numbers that I can share in that aspect. He mentioned half dozen. Felt that season was, there were a lot of seed, not too many adults, and their suggestion may have been to close the season early. Ginger, Peter?
Nothing until we hear from scalpers.
Yeah, I want to hear from the scalpers too.
Anybody like to make a comment on how's the season been? What do we see for adults? What's the health of the scallops? What are we seeing for seed?
I'll certainly make a comment. You need me to come forward and speak in the microphone?
If you would. Thanks, Bruce. We're sitting near one. Sorry.
There's a, right there. No, the one that's standing up. See the one in the corner?
Oh,
Yeah.
this is what?
Should be.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Bruce Beebe.
Yes, Bruce Beebe. I've been a scalloper here since 1986. Yeah, it's a gloomy season, and it's a struggle. Today I had one of my toughest days so far, but almost got my limit. But have been making more money this season than I have in any of the previous years because the lack of product has created a nice demand for us here on Nantucket. And for those 10 or 12 that are going at it out there, we're doing pretty well, I think. And when I look at the grounds compared to what I saw, 4 or 5 years ago, where everything was slimy and nasty, everyth's nice and crunchy and healthy. The eelgrass looks good. We're seeing tons of seed. I brought a little friend with me. I mean, this size seed, these really nice, healthy adults. I mean, healthy
1-year-olds.
1-year-olds. These are not young adults. These are by God seed. And I'll put this guy back in the harbor tomorrow. But we're also seeing very small seed, the little things that become what they're calling the young adults. And so I think we're seeing strength in the harbor. I think we're seeing 2 different spawning events. I think that leads to next year that we will have some scallops spawning early in the season, some spawning later in the season. That gives us, quality and strength of the breeding process. So next year I think is going to be a good year, and I think that there's 12 people out there going at it every day are not going to create a lot of damage out there, and I think they're responsible fishermen that aren't going to be taking what they shouldn't be taking. And so I think it's foolish to think that shutting it down, what would it actually help? I mean, there's always a sense that people think that fishermen are always out there to further their own and to kill things. But really, what we're killing is going to die in the spring. So next year, it's going to bounce back. We're going to have a good season. So I see no alarm to what's going on right now other than it's not a real productive season as it is with the adults that are in the harbor right now.
Bruce, you're fishing in town?
Yes, I am.
North, south, east, west end of the harbor?
I've been fishing in the bends on the north, excuse me, on the north side of the harbor. I haven't been along the stretch from Shimo to Quays, where guys are finding little pockets here and there. And I think that's what's kind of interesting this year is there's guys, you know, especially a couple of guys that are in this room that are very resourceful fishermen, are finding scallops in these little pockets where we haven't looked for years, but you know, we're finding little surprises here and there, and it's keeping us going, which is kind of nice. And you got to be creative to make a day of it. It's not easy fishing, but if it was easy, everybody'd be doing it.
And have you noticed many predators coming up on your culling board, green crabs or the oyster drills?
Green crabs, less than I've seen in the past couple of years.
How about the sandy bottom? You find any eelgrass, places where there was eelgrass being smothered by sand?
I think what I've seen in the center of the harbor, that area between what would be First Bend and Abrams Rock, there's a big shoal out in the middle of the harbor there that used to be pretty strong with eelgrass on the top and on the edges. I mean, not on the top. On the top was sandy, but you'd find the eelgrass off on the edges. A lot of that ground has been lost due to, I think, the high tides moving through. We're seeing bigger tides. We're seeing more water moving, which is creating that shoaling effect, I think, what you're referring to. But other areas, I've seen a real nice resurgence of eelgrass, like in the belly of First Bend is really lush with grass, and Second Bend is healthy as I've seen it in years. I haven't been as far as Third yet, but I'm moving that way.
Excuse me. So I've spoken with the shellfish warden several times, and his concern was with the price increasing, it may tempt fishermen to take more seed if there are not enough adults there. And that, of course, is an enforcement issue that I think with 10 to 12 fishermen on the water that he can keep up with. Another issue he raised was as the temperature gets colder, the vulnerability of the seed that'll be on your culling board until you push it back into the water, and its survival rate. Here again, I'm just mentioning this because I have heard that the vineyard has a 32-degree limit. Our limit is 28 degrees, and I just, like to let you guys all be aware that these are two concerns that I've spoken to the shellfish warden about, and I believe our limit has been 28 here as long as I can remember, and the first time I went was 76, so I can remember some cold days out there, and I can remember seasons that were great. 76, the limits came in at noontime on the last day, and then there were some lean years also in between there, and I've heard stories of how it's cyclical, and at this point, before anything becomes too alarmed, I think we need to look more at what you guys have to say, and remember past seasons and how they've been up and down. So, Bruce, we appreciate your information, your wisdom. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to speak to that seed issue when we talk about
Please.
the idea that the commercial fishermen would take seed. For me, I can't imagine, I can't remember seeing seed that I think would be even commercially viable. I think you'd have to be either very desperate or very inconsiderate to even think that the product that you're getting from a seed scallop, which has a very small abductor muscle compared to an adult, that it's really not going to help the fishermen. And not to mention, I think that the only fishermen that are out there plying their ways out there this year are guys that know what they're doing, are responsible fishermen, are ethical fishermen, and leave it to JC to catch one of us. I mean, I just don't see it happening. I think that everybody's playing by the rules and will and cares about the fishery that's out there doing it. I think when you see irresponsible fishing, it happens when it's a really bounteous year and you have a lot of people that are out there fishing that are not really fishermen. And I think that I say the same thing about the seed concern with, as the water gets colder, guys taking the seed out of the harbor repetitively. There's only 10 of us doing it compared to years where there's hundreds out there throwing the seed back and forth multiple times. I mean, the impact on the harbor with the few fishermen that are out there this year is really negligible. And again, I reiterate, the guys that are out there doing it this year are guys that know what they're doing and are responsible and ethical. And also, the guys that are out there that are doing it this year are guys that rely on this for their income. It's not like if this is a sport or recreation that we can close deer hunting and we can go back to work. This is our work. Thank you very much.
All good points, Bruce. Thank you. Before you leave, any comments specifically from Mr. Beebe from the board?
Oh, I was just going to ask if what the meats were like on the north side of the harbor. We used to not fish there because there were, beans that were, brought in a lower price and cost more to open in the old days. Speaking as a dinosaur.
Well, that's a little secret I wanted to keep a secret.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
But the product is beautiful this year. And even fishing up in an area where people left me alone for a couple of weeks, because I think a lot of people assume that those are beans in that area, but I was getting 8 pounds a box. It was a beautiful product.
Well, thank you for sharing. I didn't mean to ask you to divulge a secret there. I'd like to, Mr. Chairman, just weigh in on the temperature issue. Is that I believe the state regulation used to be 25 when I was fishing with my father and my uncle, and they tested it out with some scallops and felt that the 28 was the appropriate temperature because freshwater freezes at 32, but saltwater doesn't really have the same kind of cohesiveness. So that's just my take on it.
Well, I think that state law of 28 degrees is what they based on the freezing temperature at the salinity content in Nantucket Harbor or in Massachusetts in general. So, and I think that's fair. I think we've even, I think it's conservative because I think we've all done seed recovery. We've seen the seed washed up on the beach when it's iced over, and we've returned it to the harbor and it lives. I think the 10 minutes it spends on your culling board, it may shock it. There may be some attenuation, but I don't think it's. I think if we play by the rules with the 28 degrees, that's conservative enough for what we're doing out there. Anything else?
Anybody else for Bruce? Thank you, Bruce.
All right, thank you.
Just like to mention that I visited 2 shanties today, and both had town scallops on their benches, and I was impressed with what I saw, and nothing questionable at all. Easily recognizable adult scallops, fresh-looking scallop meat, and I felt really proud that we're able to provide that here through Thanksgiving and Christmas and hopefully beyond. So, any other fishermen like to speak? We'd love to hear from you. Anybody fishing in Nantucket here? Neil, please.
No, I'm out of the water.
You hear anything? You live out there?
Well, yeah, I live out there. I think a couple guys are doing okay. It's a grind-like town. I don't think there's quite as much seed as on there as there is in town out there. There's a few nuts that didn't make it by an eighth of an inch. That won't be on the but they are classical Nantucket adults. Probably drop off next year. It's unfortunate. I think there's some nuts in that too.
Oh, yeah. Quite a few. I think most of them are above the limit. I mean, I think what I'm throwing back that doesn't age properly is minimal.
Yeah, it's really close.
Yeah.
Okay. That's about all I know.
Kona, you're fishing Nantucket. Any heavy grass areas like Neil had mentioned last year that may have like what you call unavailables?
No, a lot of coding out there.
Really?
Most I've seen,
How many guys are fishing in Nantucket?
3, 4.
And the conditions as far as
The brine, the lake's not very good.
the health?
Nice looking shells, but meat's just not good.
So they're pretty much 3-year-olds, right?
A lot of them are, yeah. Bigger ones are good.
The ones that we would catch last spring.
There's some seed out there, but it's not, mounds of it.
Going outside the harbor, anybody been to Tuckanuck?
Yeah. Plenty of weed there.
I'm sorry?
Plenty of weed there. As usual.
Mm.
It doesn't seem to have backed up.
Andy.
Peter?
I walk the harbor a lot, by the field station and between Pocomo and Wallwinnet. A few times I've seen guys way up. I believe they call it Chatham Bend. Does anybody know what's being caught up there? Does it sound like maybe the stuff that Bruce is getting? Surprised to see guys that far up fishing. And I have seen on some of the blows we've had over the last month, I've seen little shoals of the size C that Bruce showed up near, sort of between that last pier up there and the Wallwinnet pier. So it's encouraging to see seed up that far. I'm just wondering who might be fishing up there and what they might have seen.
Yeah, the fellow you're speaking of that's been fishing way up harbor there is in my shanty, and he's been doing pretty well up there, but it's in very deep water, and it can only get it at low tide, so it's a really limited window.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting. I don't know if that has to do with flow rates in the harbor or bigger tides, that we're getting better flow rates out of the harbor, because traditionally that stuff that we find up there, the sea, would not survive a hot summer, and the algae would clog up the head of the harbor. But this guy found a little pocket up there, and I couldn't say exactly where he's been fishing. You probably know better than I, but I see the scallops bringing in the shanty, and he's been bringing in, sometimes with his color, bringing in 6, 7 boxes.
Fairly close to Cascada Pond, closer to Cascada Pond than the last point up there.
Yeah.
So,
in like 15, 20 feet of water, which is really deep
yeah.
for us. So.
But I had been under the impression over the years that there was just a lot of muck up there in the head of the harbor, and so we hadn't had a lot of scallops up there. So it's encouraging to hear that somebody's getting something. And with the jetties being rebuilt 3 years ago, we understand that the current in and out of the harbor has increased as much as 3/4 of a knot. So maybe that's helping. I don't know.
No more public comment, please. Dan?
I've been bringing my conch gear in from outside, and I've seen a lot of seed scallops, 25 to 35 feet of water. I'm gonna take a planer dredge with me, maybe tomorrow, and fire it over the side, because I don't think the regular dredge is being told here, because I've tried with a regular dredge a few times. Trap them up with 6 or 7 of them, the size of a $50. I've never seen any big thing of, good amount of adults out there, but I've got a dredge that Carl's gonna let me borrow his planer dredge, with chain sweep, and I'm gonna take that for a ride probably tomorrow. There was something up there.
Did you?
Talking Dionis?
To the west side, basically from the west jetty, all the way to the old Elwood, all from that 25 to 35 feet of water. Sometimes they'll come up with 10 or 12 traps. I think it's the way I drag the traps across the drag them at all, or they get pushed in the trap. But be interesting to see if I can find anything up there. I would probably throw a wrench in the works in the fishing around here with small boats, but I know a few years ago, the guys were getting them outside of boat bluffs, boats like mine, like on obstacle. They were all broke, three or four planer rings, and they were getting 10 boxes. This a couple of years ago. I was over there picking up some contracts, and they had a heart attack, guy holding in a big boat. Whoa, where'd you get those? Right outside, 35 feet of water. So, that'd be kind of neat.
Well, we've had seasons where they've been found die on us in the part of the bay, and when you look at the eelgrass mapping, it looks like it's pretty much disappeared out of the cord, but certainly, you know, good to hear again. You know, and speaking with some fishermen who took their boats out after the second day, a lot of the gloomy reports may have come from that direction. Obviously, they called it a season pretty quick, and
Because they had a land job.
and that also. So you know, we're really glad you guys who stick it out were able to uncover something better than what we've been hearing. Any comments, Connor? Bruce?
I think it's good. You of us are out there keeping the brand alive.
So based on the few of you that have spoken, can we assume that the people in this room think the season should stay open?
No doubt. I'm not even scallop fishing this year. I don't have a dog in this fight, so to speak, but
Right.
guys are making money, like Bruce said, there's 10 or 12 guys, they're not doing any damage to that bottom. Those propellers in the summertime do damage.
Right.
Than these guys are
Right.
doing right now, you know? I'd say, you know, like I said, I don't have a stake in this either way, but guys are making money, let them go. You know, the wardens are checking through seed, if nobody's had a problem with seed, nobody's breaking any laws, all the power to them if they're making money.
Behind Mr. Cocker?
Yeah, my name's Ted Jennison, I'm not a fisherman, but
Can you speak up a little? You mind coming up? Speak up a little bit? Thanks. Mr. Jennison?
yeah, can I speak from here?
That's fine.
Well, I'm not a fisherman, but I'm a buyer, and what I see every day, I tour the water and, you know, see what's going on, and the regular hardcore guys that are fishing, maybe a little later in the season, are the ones that are left now. It's no different this year than any other year, but it's the hardcore guy that fishes is the one that's still fishing now. It might be a little harder for November, beginning of December, but the hardcore guys, they're not all here, but probably half of them are here. I don't know. That's who's always there. So it's really no different. You know, the guys that cry and complain, they're the ones out of the water and they're done. But the hardcore guy that relies on it and does it, they're the ones still doing it. And with the price up there, what I see is the product's all still legit in my shanty. And if one fisherman brings in something illegit, I'll tell you right now, the other 4 or 5 are on them like flies on you know what. They monitor their own industry quite well because they're out for their interest for next year. You know, they're not that greedy. And let them go. It's no different than 2 years, 3 years ago. You know, more or less. I mean, it's a grind. You know, it was hard for the buyers last year because there were so many scallops every year. You don't hear that side of it. We don't always have a great time of selling the darn things because everybody and their brother has them.
Can you tell us a little about that? How are you selling them mostly locally, or are you?
No, I go
shipping any?
mostly away from here. Try to get a better, higher price than around locally.
Well, we heard last year there was a sign
You're always
in
gonna
Manhattan
hear, yeah.
for $60 a pound.
Yeah, and I'll hear people doing that, but you know what? Those few might buy 10, 15 pounds once a week. It's not, when you're getting 800 pounds a day, if we're getting that on a good day, you gotta move the stuff. I don't have time for 10, 15 pounds. I wanna do 30, 40, 80, 120, because I'll never get out of my day if I think that, you know, when you're getting a lot on a big year. you have to take each year with a grain of salt and then pick and choose what you're gonna do, so to speak. But, all in all, it's pretty good, you know, it's hard for them, but, maybe a little easier on us to get rid of them, but now we can sell for a higher price at the same time and reward them for their hard work. I think their scale of paying the opener 20% gets a little skewed when the prices get this high. Others, like Long Island, pays a flat rate of $2.50 a pound or something, and that's it. No matter what the going rate is, because the opener is still taking about the same amount of time to open. But that's not any discussion for here.
Correct.
And speaking about what Deanna's saying about off on the vineyard, 20, 30 feet of water. 2 years ago, they found them in Mattapoisett in really deep water. They were coming up in the lobster traps.
Yep.
And that's the year they killed us, and they had a huge year for 5 months straight over there. So you may be onto something with that, because they found them in really deep, I don't know, lobster pot water's deeper than that, isn't it?
Yeah, but they were getting me like 30, 35 feet of water over Mattapoisett.
Okay,
You know.
yeah.
But our dredgers won't work. I don't think our dredgers.
No, you won't have enough weight.
But
So I'm all in favor of keeping it going. It's the hardcore guys that go are going. And it's no different. It's harder this year, but the same group of hardcore guys are still going. They don't piss and moan, they just fish.
Are there any residual negative effects from the sewer disaster last winter
No,
that you know?
I think it's out of sight, out of mind a little bit. If you're away, a little ways, they don't even, that was last year, people forget. You know, and I would say, hey, everything dies when it hits that temperature of water, when it hits, you know, that time of the year and everything is, you know.
So you have a demand for the product and you're shipping it out?
Well, I mean, it's there, it's not, it's the holiday, it's the peak season, put it that way.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens after the holidays, you know. But I don't think there's enough this year coming in to flood the market per se, you know.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
To the left of you, Mr. Beebe. Any comment? My eyesight's kind of blurry, I don't know.
Josh Eldridge, no,
Josh.
I don't really have any, well, actually, if I were gonna make a comment on the subject, I think as a committee, as a board, if you guys wanted to contemplate coming up with a criteria that would trigger a closure of the season, that would be a meaningful conversation so the fishermen know what to expect. There's a criteria, it's not just based on anecdotal hearsay, whether or not you take the state ruling of 20% seed count or make it some other variation, possibly take your suggestion as well as changing the temperature. If you have, per se, 1:1 ratio of seed to adult scallops, you can have a varying temperature degree to try to protect a large majority of the seed and spawning stuff.
Good point. I believe the state's 5%, or are we, they're 20% and we're 5%?
I thought the state was 20%,
Okay.
but I could be wrong on my.
All right, well,
Numbers,
if our shellfish warden dumps your catch, if he sees 5% seed, he's gonna confiscate it. And
Yeah. I believe that number comes to the fishery grounds for there to trigger a closure of an area, not what you're actually allowed to take home with you
Yes.
and harvest.
Thanks, Josh. Anybody else on this subject? Ken? No? All right, board members?
Yeah. So should this come to a situation where the natural resources is leaning toward maybe a closure, and they come here and we have our special meeting and you guys come and talk, and then it, you know, goes to the Board of Selectmen if they have to have a public hearing, will you guys come to those meetings and tell us what you're telling now? I mean, it's you guys that are out there fishing. You guys want to keep it going. We need, other than our recommendation, we need you guys to come and say, hey, this is going okay, and because otherwise, you know, we just, you know, if you're not here, then defending yourselves, you know what I'm saying?
Somebody else will speak for you.
Right. Because we'll support you. So.
And as far as changes in regulations with the temperature, we'd all need to see some science on that. It's interesting to hear that, you know, as far back as Ginger's dad, possibly fished even down to 25-degree weather. You know, and I'd like to hear some more updates on predators. The article in the newspaper had a comment from Ken Kelly mentioning the oyster drills, and I actually caught Ken yesterday coming in with just under $1.50, but he was happy with his catch, that he was going to go home with $150 for the day when he opened them himself, and that's all he needed to survive. And Ken, being one of our previous biologists, I like to respect his opinions, and so all good stuff. But the predators are certainly, we'd like to have them on our radar. We kind of rely on, we're waiting for a study on the green crab, and studies can take a long time. We're hoping to hear from the Land Council in the future on that, and you know, I'd love to hear some more science about the oyster drill. How long has the oyster drill been an issue here? Is it lured in by all the oyster farming? Is it you know, going to be a byproduct of oyster farming that could damage scalloping? So hopefully our biologists and scientists can come up with information where we can find a balance with all of this, and not spoil anything historic that's been here naturally. So we want to hear from you guys whenever you feel there's something we need to hear. Thank you all for coming in. Anything else on this subject? Review of the November 6th Land Council presentation. Peter has some information of how we can look up our meetings, previous meetings, and be able to see them.
Yeah, well, there's on the town's website, as well as on YouTube. On YouTube there's a channel for the town of Nantucket, and you just click on playlists, and then you can find the meetings, is what I was told by Channel 18.
So get on YouTube, then Nantucket.gov. Do you put that?
Just type in Nantucket or town of Nantucket, and the channel will come up, and all the meetings come up.
So you don't need the .gov.
No.
I've gone to YouTube and just put in Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board meetings, and it comes up too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And you can view the entire meeting.
Yeah.
The audio's not that great. It wasn't that great, but yes.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the audio will be better, you know, if all of us sit like this and speak into our mics, and, you know, no offense, Andy, but everyone who spoke tonight that didn't speak into a mic might as well have been miming, because you won't hear them. They need to come down and speak into that one or this one. Is your mic not working right there?
That one doesn't seem to be on. Oh, well, now it is. Oh,
None of
thanks.
them are on. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
noticed that myself. I didn't know how to do that.
But if we want to hear, there are a couple of people who watch this meeting, I guess, religiously, and they've contacted me or was asking me how to get to, you know, how do you watch it? So, well, no one has your kind of time.
I think Kona makes the time. There we go. Boy, hold on. All right. So as far as the Land Council presentation goes, there was a lot of good stuff there, and I think we all should review it. And I think you'll find, Peter, because you weren't here, I'd really like you to see it. And you know, as far as the information with the storm drains, the eelgrass transplanting was really a minor portion of it compared to a lot of other things that Cormac had to share with us. Cormac was happy to be here to speak with us, said he'd be glad to come in again, but you know, I'd want to have, you know, certain things for him to come in to discuss that pertain to us, of course.
We better get him in soon now because he's leaving the Land Council to be the executive director of the Conservation Foundation.
Wow, this is new news.
They announced it this week.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
And I believe it's in the springtime is when he'll take over. So
Mhm.
he'll be with the Land Council for a bit longer.
All right. Well, as far as the eelgrass goes and the green crabs, he was, that's Emily's portion of work, and Emily couldn't make it that night, but maybe at some point in the future we can get Emily in, and once they've had some time to analyze what the transplant has, how it's progressed. Items for the next meeting or public comment. Any more public comment, Ken?
You miss us, don't you? You're going to run next year.
We miss you. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Kona.
Do you want an item for the next meeting?
You mentioned the Nantucket ditch.
Yep. Yep. I think that is there any danger of the town actually doing anything anytime soon?
Just before Bobby DeCosta left the select board, I remember him arguing for a dredge that we ought to have made specifically for the ditches there, and certainly improved circulation may help, but you may have a difference of opinion.
Well,
I think a lot also has to do with the condition of the landfill and what's coming out of there.
I can only provide what's really anecdotal just from my observations. My concern is that there be some actual science because the water does flow out of Hither Creek, but it also flows in, and it flows in as far as the North Head. And so in the summer, when the pond level is lower, everything that's going into Hither Creek eventually is making its way into the pond. And unless we actually know what the circulation is like, we don't know if the pond is acting as a reservoir for everything from Mill Point to Smith's Point, just because the flow is pretty strong into the pond. It certainly changed the plant life that I've seen, and the salinity data and everything. That should all, I think, come in front of us before we make a recommendation to do it or not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if the estuaries project report from Nantucket has been completed? And
I don't know.
It was completed for Nantucket Harbor, and as far as I knew, it was completed but not signed off on from Nantucket, and that included all of the contributing water bodies, and so there might be information in there. You familiar with that, estuaries?
No, I need to look at it. So
the estuaries project is a ongoing analysis of the 89 embayments in southeastern Massachusetts, and with the goal of determining the TMDL number, total maximum daily load, that a water body can have and still be functioning healthy water body. So they've done one for Nantucket. If you go online and type in Estuaries Project, Massachusetts, and it was done by jointly by Department of Environmental Protection and by SMAST, the School of Marine Science and Technology at UMass Dartmouth, and you can find the reports that have been completed and read them. And we're supposed to have them done for. One was done for Sackatchew Pond, for Nantucket Harbor, for Hummock Pond. I don't know if Myacomet Pond's been done, but I would think that by now Nantucket Harbor should be done. But in there, if it's done, you probably find some of the stuff you're looking for.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. Well, we'll be sure to, look up some information if you can, Ginger, and we'll entertain this at the next meeting.
That sounds good.
Ken, anything?
No, I'm all set. Well, I shouldn't say that. In the past week or, not week, probably last couple of weeks, there was a report when they started talking about the number of scallops that the harbors, like, it was a very disparaging report that it talked about that is it even worth it? It was almost like that. I don't know if you guys saw the article in the Inquirer Mirror, but I don't know if we should talk, have like a general discussion again about how the plan's being implemented with the harbor plan and see if it's doing well. I mean, get another update from Natural Resources.
Mhm.
So maybe if Jeff's here, we can ask him about that.
Certainly, I'm hoping we have some water quality testing reports and you know, his summary of the effects of the previous summer. So, Peter?
I'm all set.